Hey, wait a minute.
Thing.
So wait, now can you hear this?
They are almost professional level.
Yeah, but I take that back, every word of it.
Yes. So now we get to go use all our stuff. All right.
Don't keep doing that because you're gonna. I'll hang up in fury.
Welcome to the Board Game Snobs podcast. Critically harsh reviews with a touch of class.
And go.
Welcome, hola, and salutations to all who listen to what is possibly the greatest board game podcast that's not really about board games.
90% banter.
10%.
No, wait. Not 99% banter.
80% wheel, 5% something power of, what's that Fort Minor song?
Power of attorney.
Oh, no.
90% banter, 10% board games. We'll go with that.
Jerry's here. I'm the primary star.
I'm the primary host, Gaby, and with us also is our friend.
Hello. The showpiece.
Wait, you keep saying showpiece. I don't know what that sounds like. Like you should. I don't know.
A showpiece is like a trophy wife. I think that's slang for trophy wife in England.
I'm basically the guy who just puts his mustache on the cover of board games and just looks silly. Basically, that's a showpiece.
That's not.
Way to self-deprecate, Enrique.
That's very nice. Very nice with the
And with us today,
Dan.
I would say special guest, but this is your fourth appearance?
Daniel.
Third appearance?
Daniel.
So he's a regular guest?
Daniel.
Regular guest.
Hughes.
Primary guest. That's what I call
Primary
myself.
guest, Dan Hughes.
Does Dan have a
Yes.
middle name?
Daniel, what's your middle name?
Francis.
Oh, no, it starts with a G.
Gene.
Gertrude.
No. George.
Oh,
George.
Daniel
So now-
George.
Now you can all steal my identity.
Excellent.
And why wouldn't you? Let's face it. Everybody aspires to be me.
What about you would I want to steal?
Well, my dashing good looks,
I say again, what about you would I want to steal?
my immense wealth, my status as Titan of the internet. There are many things.
Self-appointed. Hey, has anyone ever told you what's that comedian's name?
The Dan Carlin.
No. The comedian.
Jamie Stegmaier.
No, he's not a comedian.
Mitch Hedberg.
He was on the Sarah Silverman show.
Carrot Top.
He
Look a bit like Carrot Top.
He has a poker podcast.
Hey, poker as in cards or
Yeah. Yes, cards. Brian Posehn. You are the spitting image of Brian Posehn.
Well, I've never seen Brian Posehn.
Hey,
So-
we can screen share on Zoom, but that takes up too much time. Everyone, side by side, Posehn, Posehn.
let me see. That's insane.
That's like your twin brother from another mother, Dan.
Right there.
You should check
Oh, yeah, I have been accused of looking like him
that.
before, yes.
It's a striking resemblance.
Yes.
He was in I watched an episode of The Neighborhood with Cedric the Entertainer, and he had an episode in that, and I was like, and he had that long grizzled beard that you had, that I see now you have shaved.
I have shaved. I've shaved because I went to a wedding on the last weekend, and so I thought it was appropriate. I was best man, no less.
Oh, okay.
So I thought it was appropriate to shave. I was saving this for my own podcast, but because Delicio is never around.
What's the deal with that guy?
Well, he's busy. He's always busy. He's jetting off to some kind of every 3 seconds is a new Dice Tower retreat or something like that. But anyway, I did a best man speech, a very short best man speech, and it only had 2 jokes in it because it was incredibly short. And 50% of those jokes were about Dungeons and Dragons, and 50% of those jokes died on. I don't mind telling you. They were met with very, very puzzled frowns by everybody apart from the group.
Not a big D&D crowd there.
No, not a big D&D crowd. They were a big brass band crowd, actually. So, yeah, because the bride is a drummer in a brass band. So all the brass band.
You should have made some Artie Shaw jokes.
I've got that. Even I wouldn't have got that.
Oh,
So
okay.
that would be no good at all.
What you should have had
Yeah.
is somebody doing a rim shots every time you said a joke in the back. That'd have been good.
Yeah,
That'd have got the drummers going.
So, okay, can you regale us with one of your jokes?
Well, they weren't. No. I'm putting the whole thing behind me. I'm putting the whole thing behind me now. It's like I'm wiping it from my mind, like it never happened. Like total recall.
You rolled a D1 on those jokes.
Yeah, it was bad. It was even a joke about how I wasn't going to make any Dungeons and Dragons jokes. That's what it was.
Oh,
it was
inceptual.
It was. I primarily know the Groom through our shared love of board gaming and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. So I can't make a long speech because most of it you'd get a 15-minute monologue about he and I rolling a 6 and beating that orc one time. And that was the joke. I thought that's a good joke. I think that's a good joke delivered properly, which obviously that wasn't at that point. That would be a good joke, but everyone just stony silence, absolute stony silence. So I thought, right.
And then you should have started off with some self-deprecating humor, Jerry.
Well, that self-deprecation, we were going to talk about that. Thank you for hard merging into that. I'll actually hard merge this twice because I recently had to give an impromptu speech, I guess you could say. And so I will relay this.
Well, that's a court appearance, not a speech, isn't it? You can't really count it when it's a court appearance.
It's called testimony.
Speaking of hard merge, I have to use this every now and then.
And now a hard merge into board games.
Oh, that was awful.
You're the one that got that clip,
But
not
we're
me.
not hard merging in the board games.
Okay, then ignore that whole thing.
I'm
right
going
there.
to. Please, you
I'll
wasted
cut it
your
out.
time. Try not to waste any more
You're
time.
like an awful 80s music breakfast DJ. It really is. This program, this podcast. You were
gone.
good. I let it go. I let it go when you were saying that you were the premier nonsense pretending to be a board game podcast, even though we know you're the second best, and that's a far distant second. Well, I'd like to point
Wait, let
out.
me say this. And we're back. Go ahead, Jerry.
I say recently, we just got done talking about self-deprecation. But a few days
We
ago...
talked about self-deprecation on the podcast coming out after this one, and often making references to the podcast we're about to record that was already in the past.
Wow.
It's very
Inception.
interesting.
So there's
Why
some...
don't you just do it the other way? Why don't you just release that one first then?
No, we're
No,
not.
no.
No, there's some things we're going to have to say so that it'll make sense on the next podcast.
Wow.
Essentially, I was recently awarded, due to my wonderful coworkers and the community that I live in, a certain award that I don't particularly want to get well into. But basically, the local community was doing this thing about healthcare workers, and it was put on.
Oh, good for you.
You're welcome. And so here in, like in the
Shocking.
in the States, they're doing this thing about, healthcare heroes and all this stuff. And for some reason or another, my name got put out there. And long story short,
Don't act like you didn't put it in there 20 times.
I won. I won. And so I was surprised to come
Stuff in the ballot boxes.
I didn't even know it existed. I was surprised to come into work. There was a lot of people there, and I panicked because it was obvious that I needed to give some sort of like Oscar speech, and I blanked. And so I looked amongst the crowd and realized there's nobody here that probably has watched this show. So basically, I gave my own rendition of the speech given by Major Dick Winters at the end of Band of Brothers. That I'm not a hero, but I lead a company of heroes. And so if anybody ever watches that series and realizes that I stole his speech there at the last...
Can we go back to his name real quick? What is it?
Dick Winters.
Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
Great. You've never watched Band of Brothers?
No, I just think there's going to be an anonymous letter going into your work, I should suspect, with Gabby's handwriting, asking them all to watch the Dick Winter speech in Band of Brothers. That's what I would do in his anyway.
It's on its way.
Anyway, so now that I have been labeled a hero, which I have a hard time arguing with, because I have done heroic things by definition. I have been given, I don't want to say a plaque, but things that say that my name and thus equals hero.
Platitudes.
It's hard for me to understand self-deprecation. I have a pretty good firm view on what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And one thing that I've always appreciated about Mr. Daniel Hughes is that he and I share the same reasonable outlook upon ourselves and our abilities and our strengths and our weaknesses. And we are not one to self-deprecate?
Interesting, because I would say I self-deprecate incredibly a lot.
Oh, so you're one of those people.
Yeah.
I think that self-deprecation is useless.
Welcome to the team, Dan.
Fight me over this. I think that, and I want your opinion as a psychiatric, whatever they call you.
Mental health.
Mental health. Wow. Yeah, we don't do mental
health nurse.
Mental health nurse. Self-deprecation, is that an activity that is healthy to engage in emotionally, mentally?
I think it depends on the culture you grow up in, Jerry. Because I think the things that you're taking for me being self-deprecating, being not self-deprecating, like me calling myself an internet titan, in actual fact, self-deprecation, because it's me making the joke that I am not an internet titan. If you see what I mean, it's done with a sense of irony. Is irony the right word? I don't know. Whatever. I think self-identification is a fantastic tool. It's a social lubricant. It's a way of ingratiating yourself into society without people thinking you're big-headed. It's a way of demonstrating that you don't believe you're above anybody else. It's a way of gelling, and it's a way of making people laugh. And we all like making people laugh.
But
gelling.
What if I didn't feel like I'm better than everybody else? What if there's like, if I'm being told I'm a hero?
It's like,
how can I deny it?
There's a group of people I want to, ingratiate myself to. You got to lube up.
Yep.
Put that self-deprecation on and slide right on in there.
I would say that self-deprecation is...
I think it's self-awareness, and you lack that sometimes.
I don't.
You do.
I am aware of my
you do not.
surroundings.
Whenever you come into, and I've said this on a podcast before.
Oh, so it must be true.
It is. Whenever you come into my home and my wife is trying to relax in her chair, and Jerry comes and does, hey, easy now, easy. When she's like, and you're just like, what are you watching? Blah, blah. I'm like, Jerry, just come in here and play, guys. Oh, well, what are you going on? And he's like, Jerry's the star of his own show, Dan.
Well, here's the thing.
He's the star of his own show. Wherever he walks into, he's the star of his own show. And he doesn't realize sometimes people just want to chill. They want to relax. They don't want to be regaled with story after story of how heroic you are.
Gaby's wife, Gina, is a jewel. And unfortunately, her life, she spends around somebody who is less than outgoing. Let me just say that. And so...
A boulder. Are you saying a jewel compared to a boulder?
Essentially. And so obviously when I come over, I bring a certain level of not just culture, but just, it lightens her day up. And I can tell. I know you don't pick up on
She's a jewel. She doesn't want any of your foolish games.
She looks... That was a deep cut.
Wow.
That was really good.
Is she even still alive?
that was there's some boomers right now that are just they're sitting there polishing their New Balances going, oh yeah, that was good. Do you remember?
That was meant for you.
Oh yeah. Mike DeLisio just spilt his Tom Collins.
His seltzer.
Honey! They're talking about us.
Tiffany.
Oh, yeah, Tiffany. She's another jewel. Why is it that all the board game media
Carrie,
people...
Tiffany, Gina.
That I know. Jewels.
No denial.
Anyways, Gaby's wife is very nice. We need to have her on the podcast, but she doesn't.
She refuses. She hates podcasting. She doesn't hate podcasting. I have asked her, I'm like, babe, I'd like to get your perspective on our board games. Wants nothing to do with it.
Our only hope is that if Enrique will attract someone, and then that person will come, that would be nice.
Why are you putting hopes on that?
I'm not. I'm just saying that one day.
Enrique, do you enjoy being single?
Yes.
Oh wow! Now this is unfair. I sat through you interrogating Matthew Jude about his single status.
I've been hunting. I've been on the hunt for Matthew. I've been trying to get him a woman. I'm trying to help, doing my best. But Enrique,
yes.
We've been trying.
Oh no.
And we've not been successful.
I know you haven't been successful.
I left
We're looking for player number 2 to pick up that controller right beside you.
The lady at Dunkin'
Donuts.
Donuts.
You used a video game reference for that, but it was kind of clever.
I mean, it's going to be in your mom and dad's house still, but it's okay. Sometimes that happens. Me and Gina, we sold our house, moved into my in-laws temporarily. I learned a lot of things about my in-laws that, sometimes you wish you didn't know.
Okay, so
What? Okay, I never said this before.
Okay, go ahead.
When me and my wife were dating,
It's kind of weird to date your wife, but go ahead.
with me, a hashtag date night. Does that bother you?
Mm-hmm.
It bothers me when couples put date night, hashtag date night. It's your wife. What you date when you're dating. Now, if you want to take, this is the thing, especially if you have no kids, every night's date night for you and your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you're married, got kids, got a lot going on, sure. Take a date night, go out for a dinner with you and your wife alone, slough your kids off on the babysitter or your in-laws.
If
right?
you're married, it's hashtag quietly ignoring each other with a hint of passive aggressiveness night. You watch Netflix alone while I paint my miniatures.
Yes.
Wow.
The date night, like that, to me, that's a social, that's something you put on Instagram just to make everybody say, oh, he loves her so much.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say it's a hashtag bit. That's the problem, not the date night. You can call it date night to each other. But the fact you need to advertise it to the world that you are spending some time with your wife is pathetic, quite frankly. You're all pathetic.
Advertise it. And I'm like, why do you got to advertise you're on date night?
Dan.
Because they want other people to be jealous. That's why they want to paint this picture of a life that
Exactly.
that is admired and coveted by other people. And I don't approve. God damn.
Let's make this I got to edit so much that Dan said so far.
Dan's passionate.
Well, no, we try to keep this a family show. Hashtag family show.
No, just bleep it out.
Now, wait a
Cut
minute.
it
Wait a
out.
minute. Dan,
I wasn't aware. I wasn't. Go, yeah, sorry. Yep.
I need to know what you did. And this will help Enrique out. What did you do to woo Mrs. Hughes?
Wow.
What did you do?
Mrs. Hughes was originally going out with one of my friends. Yeah. Oh, scandal. And then she broke up with him. And I just was around. I'm no good at asking people out. They just have to kind of drop enough hints around me saying they find me mildly attractive.
I'm the same way.
Same.
That's how I met my wife.
Yeah.
I was just extremely handsome at the time. And she made enough moves toward me where even an idiot like me, self-deprecation, could realize that she was attracted to me.
So, were you a nurse at the time?
No, my first date with my wife was the first day of nursing college for me. So that was 23 years ago now. No, but I was working with people with learning difficulties. So I was a hero at that point. I was,
The first date with my wife was with somebody who was also a failed, what do you call that? A failed suitor, I guess you could say.
Oh, okay.
Somebody who was interested in her, and she spurned his advances. He had then thus been married and recently married, and we and him were friends, and we went on a date together. He taking his wife, and me being quite socially awkward, taking my newly asked out girlfriend.
Wait. Your friend was your wife's ex-boyfriend.
Yes. No?
He desperately wanted to be and was spurned.
Oh, spurned.
Spurned.
The spurned.
That's when you get the spurn in the South, it means you're spirited away. You're told to. Anyway, long story short, on the way to the restaurant, we witnessed a car wreck, which I then stopped the vehicle, jumped over a fence,
became a hero,
and jumped on top of a half-sunken car, knocked out a window, and pulled some unconscious individual out of a sinking.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah,
that'll do it. I said, do you want to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer tonight? She said, yeah.
Did your shirt happen to rip off midway through, Jerry?
Pretty much.
Of course he would say that.
So, Dan, your take on self-deprecation, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I think that people, and I have a very controversial view of it because all of my views are controversial.
Because there's novelty. Yep.
Right. I think that just self-deprecating is an excuse.
It's cliche at this point.
Yes, it's not cliche. I'm not cliche.
If you do enough things enough times, it becomes cliche for you at that point.
I don't know if you know what that word means.
I may not.
Look it up.
He's just looking it up now.
Look it up now, please.
Hey, wait. This would be a good spot for our ad sponsor. We have not yet done it.
Are you going to read it?
We need to read it right now.
Now, this is the ad sponsor. You do your
We're being
ad.
featured this week, Dan, and I brought you on. I was like, Dan, he will bring the numbers.
Because he's an internet titan.
Internet titan, Dan. Dice Tower regular.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. regular host, no less. Not even one of the hoi polloi contributors. No, I'm a host.
You have advanced beyond contributor to host. You, Mike, and Chris.
Once a month.
Very nice. The coup is nearly complete.
What?
The coup. Coup? You know what a coup is?
Oh, the coup. I thought you said the who is nearly complete.
That doesn't work.
It's been going a while, but yeah, I suppose so. I think one of them had some trouble with the police.
Okay, here's my ad read.
Nice merge.
Oh, my God. See, I'm sure they appreciate that. This podcast is sponsored by Podbean. Podbean is the easiest way to create your own podcast. We use Podbean to host Board Game Snobs. Download the free Podbean podcast app to start, record, and publish your very own podcast in minutes. Podbean provides everything you need to run your podcast, and you can record and publish episodes directly from the app on your phone, Jerry.
Really?
I don't know. I'm supposed to ad-lib in here.
Don't ad-lib.
Download the free Podbean app today. That's Podbean. Head on over to Podbean at www.podbean.com and use the code. Here's the code, everybody. Use this code, podcast21, for your first 30 days of podcast hosting for free. Check it out.
I'm drinking Jim Beam, so it all works out. This is what it feels like to sell out. This is when you feel like you're
only you're receiving money instead of being featured.
But that's okay. Being featured is kind of like
we
being
need them clicks.
The prettiest. Like, people are watching us now. We're being pointed, and so who knows? This podcast might take off, and we might be something very special in the future. Who knows?
I think we're special now. The relationship I have with you and Enrique, it's special to me. Even Dan as our primary guest.
Mm-hmm. I feel very special.
Dan is a designer, and I'm very pleased that I inspired him to design Core Quest, and that he proclaimed on this very podcast he wouldn't ever had no interest.
His vehement denial.
I don't want to design a board game, and then he went out and designed a board game. I think it's amazing what
a smash hit
I can do to inspire people who are not motivated, who have no want or drive. But that's what I do. I'm kind of like, what's that guy that motivates people, the motivational speaker? Like, he lives in the van down by the river.
Chris Farley is all I know.
Anyways, so with Dan, as we are anxiously awaiting Core Quest.
You and me both.
Right. And I am just as nervous as you are in terms of all the shipping issues and everything. It doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. But I have found that just watching your campaign and all that it entails has done everything to make me not want to ever do a Kickstarter myself or design a board game. I've watched this and thought, thank God I did not attempt this myself, because it looks horrifying. And so not only the just the interactions that you have to have with other people, but like, when do you get to be at the Vital Lacerda level when you don't have to worry about other people's thoughts or opinions or shipping or anything of that nature? That's where I want to be.
I think you need to be. I think you can get there as long as someone else publishes your game. I think if you're publishing your game, you need to be on. I don't. It's been an experience, but I think I've been quite lucky in the interactions I've had with people. None of it's been particularly negative. Sometimes I wish that people read the updates before asking me questions, which I've just told them about in the update. But other than that, it's all good. It's all good. I've just finished. I'm just halfway through designing the expansion, actually, just in case we need it. So I don't know if we will need it. It depends on how it lands. But I just thought I'd get on with that.
And a company has picked up the game as well, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sort of. Yeah. No, it definitely has. It's a company that's also run by the person who was helping me kickstart in the first place. So it's kind of a little bit incestuous. But it's been translated to 6 languages, Jerry. 6 languages.
So people can play your game in English, British, and what else?
Yorkshire. Yeah. American, but you have to change a few words. Yeah. No, it's going to be in Korean, Chinese, French, Spanish, Dutch, and Polish and English.
Ah, the Dutch. I have feelings about the Dutch.
I know a number of Dutch people. They're a very blunt race.
Yes,
Jerry.
they are.
You'll probably get on with them very well. They tell you what they think. I'll tell you that much.
I couldn't find their country if I tried. I don't know exactly where Holland is at.
Well, there is no such country as Holland, so you're all right.
Well, there we go. They're Dutchland. Dutchland? Are they Dutchlands?
It's Netherlands.
Netherlands. I get it confused.
Jerry, you're so embarrassing.
I'm
right
American.
Now.
I don't know. We're not part
No,
of.
it's confused. Holland is an area within the Netherlands.
That's a sauce over here that we don't use.
A Netherlands sauce.
We think that I'm from the South. We think mayonnaise is a side dish. We don't use these other fancy condiments.
In the UK, mayonnaise is a quite middle class and fancy in itself.
Really?
I'll have you know. Yeah.
I made a dish last night. And I say I made a dish. It was from one of those boxes that they send you in the mail. Like you can sign up where they'll send you. Do they do that in England where they send you food in the mail?
Yes, they do.
I have gotten into the habit of making dinner utilizing the whatever we call it, the HelloFresh, whatever company. They need to be a sponsor.
Dan, okay, Jerry, stop. Dan, what have you been up to?
I've been drinking a lot of Jim Beam, so I'm talking a lot.
Dan, what have you been up to? As you said, you and Mike have your own podcast, Sporadically Bored.
Mike.
And it is very sporadic these days. Very sporadic.
Well, monthly we're aiming for. Monthly. And I'm also on the Dice Tower monthly as a co-host on their board game breakfast.
The board game breakfast with you, Mike, and Chris Yee.
Yeah, and it's fun. I'm enjoying doing that. But I've not been up to a lot. I've been doing a lot of Core Quest stuff. That's been taking up most of my free time. I don't know if you're aware of what day it is today, guys.
I do not.
It's November the 5th. Do you know the significance of November the 5th in the UK?
It's Guy Fawkes.
It's Guy Fawkes Day. So
Guy Fawkes?
It's bonfire night. And so the entire of the air is full of fireworks at the moment. So you might hear some banging and whizzing and popping.
I have only seen V for Vendetta once, and that's my only intro into Guy Fawkes Day.
Well, that's not really what it's based off, but yeah.
Natalie Portman is a jewel.
And speaking of jewels,
we don't all come together to celebrate V for Vendetta.
So what is Guy Fawkes Day to us Americanos?
It's something to do with Brexit.
Jerry, I didn't ask you.
Something to do with what?
I asked
Brexit. That did have something to do with Brexit.
Hey, where's Brexit before Brexit? It's just, I don't know if you call it celebration. It's celebrating the moment where a man called Guy Fawkes, or Gildo Fawkes, I think his real name was, tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament.
Didn't he take the ring to Mordor?
Yep, he did that as well. After he tried to blow up the House of Parliament. And so he was stopped from doing so, and he was dragged through the streets of London, then burnt alive on a bonfire.
Oh.
Ouch. Well, that's going to leave a mark.
Well, wait a minute.
He may have been drawn and quartered as well as... he was treated quite well. It was all about wanting to bring the Catholic faith to the UK, and the UK didn't.
So
really
why do y'all celebrate it? That's what I don't...
I don't know. I never really quite understood why we celebrate it. We get a big bonfire and you put a dummy on it, which you call a guy, and so you burn this effigy, and often it's the effigy of Guy Fawkes, but sometimes it's the effigy of...
he was a fox.
Fox. It's spelled differently. Fox.
That's what I find fascinating. He was a fox this whole time.
Stop.
His furry little tail.
No, Fox.
Stop.
You're saying
that
it wrong.
guy was a fox.
No.
He might have been Dutch, actually.
I'm
not sure.
The Dutch.
The Dutch. It goes back to the Dutch.
I have issues with the Dutch.
What's up with you and the
They
Dutch?
eat dark. All right. I'm not racist. But they eat.
No. Never start a phrase with that.
Everyone says that, and then they get really
I'm just
racist.
saying is that the Dutch puzzle me. No, I love Bruges. No, I didn't know
Hollandaise sauce.
y'all burnt stuff on there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we burn an effigy, and there's a bonfire, but then there's fireworks, and I've always been petrified of fireworks and sparklers. You guys have sparklers, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Why are you petrified of those?
Well, because during my youth, there was a very effective public safety advertising campaign about the dangers of fireworks, which has emotionally scarred me to a significant extent. And so now I'm petrified of fireworks because I'm afraid they're going to blow up in my face. And there were some really scary adverts on about holding sparklers by the wrong end and getting burns and fireworks blowing up in your face. And
did some of you light the sparkler and then grab the end
Was
that
there
was
a
on
demonstration?
fire?
No, when it goes out, you put it down and you pick it back up again.
Don't grab the end that's on fire. I mean, that doesn't seem that complicated.
Enrique's over here talking trash. Enrique stuck his hand in a toaster that was on. So you have no, we don't let you
you have no freeness of speech, Enrique.
And July 4th,
I wanted my toast, though.
Yeah.
It was stuck in the toaster.
Yes, I know. And so July 4th here, blowing up fireworks and things of that nature. So everybody here does fireworks, even year round even. We have fireworks stores that only open for 2 weeks before July 4th and just sell
that's
fireworks.
The same with us, apart from with November the 5th. It's basically roughly very analogous to, and we also, but now it's crept into, it's basically from now till New Year's Eve because we do fireworks on New Year's Eve as well. So I just hate fireworks. I hate fireworks. It's like Beirut out there. It's awful.
The dogs hate fireworks.
Dogs hate fireworks. I hate fireworks. Let's ban them. That's what I say.
I hate dogs.
There's a firework. I'm not interested in what you hate and what you don't hate, Jerry, because you don't like self-deprecation. There's a firework factory just over the valley from me, or used to be a firework factory just over the valley from me, and they used to have, and we can still see they've all got pillboxes that are all 50 meters apart, and each pillbox had one person in it working on their fireworks because they couldn't all work in the same building because in case one exploded, it was to stop the rest of the place going up in a massive...
In case Gerald come to work on meth, we don't want him shaking, setting off a sparkler with the M80s. That makes sense. That's a good OSHA safety thing.
You can talk about your hatred of dogs now.
No, I have a fake hatred of dogs. What happens is, and I was telling Enrique this, I was trying to help Enrique understand that what he needs to do to suss out any potential mates is to say something that's mildly controversial. So just put out an opinion that might raise some eyebrows. And so just tell somebody, hey, I don't like dogs. I think that their loyalty is very sus. You think your dog loves you, but he doesn't. It's situational. If he was raised with somebody else, he would love that person.
No. I think that's more cats.
That's the same as that's the same as human beings. You think your wife loves you, but if she never knew you, she wouldn't love you.
You adopt a kid and treat it good, it's going to love you.
That's not true. I have two of them, and that doesn't happen. You have to. That's how it goes. So
I'm going to have a talk with Kaya when she gets old enough.
Kaya loves me.
You just said she didn't.
No, I just know you have to earn it.
No,
it's like anything else. It's earned.
Good thing you're a hero.
When your father's a hero, it's hard not to love him. I don't know. I'm glad. Dan has 4 or 5 kids, doesn't he? Dan has several.
How many kids you got, Dan?
So he's in
3.
Cora being one of them.
She's 8 or 9.
Cora's the most profitable one so far. Yeah.
We need to have Cora on the podcast, Jerry.
That would bring in the
Dan,
numbers.
would you allow Cora on our podcast?
Yeah, she's in bed at the moment. But, otherwise,
what's her bedtime?
What time is it now? It's nearly 10 now, so it's before now. She went to bed at 8:30.
8:30. I'm guessing that's 8:30.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. You're a weird British timekeeping. So strange.
That's a third past Sterling. When does the Queen go to bed? Well, we can't. What's a 10th before the Queen? Yeah. So you have 3 children, and kids are a wonderful thing, especially when you can.
This is a conversation I have to tune out on because I don't have kids, so I'm out.
You could have had kids, but you chose wisely.
I chose not to
because really, at some point in time, the kids will turn against you, and you have to be strong enough to decide: is it them or me? And so that would be the thing. So that's where you got to be at. You got to be ready, or you got to be able to profit off your kids. And so with Cora and Dan, that's a great skit. That's a thing. That's Dan Hughes is the Kim Kardashian. What's the Mama Kardashian?
I'm like the Fagin of the board gaming world. That's what I like to think of myself.
Fagin.
Who are the Fagins?
That's an Oliver Twist reference.
Oh,
no,
wow.
We don't read
We
books.
don't read Dickens.
We don't.
Well, you must have seen the film. The Muppets haven't made a version yet, but when they do, I recommend you watch it.
The Muppets.
Is that the one? Can I have some more porridge, please?
Oliver, you must know Oliver.
I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar.
Fagin was the chief of all the he employed all the pickpockets.
Ah, okay.
The joke's significantly less funny when it was only mild in the first place, and then you have to explain it.
Right, much like your D&D joke at your wedding.
Very much like the D&D joke at the wedding, yes.
When are we going to hard merge this into board game talk?
And now a hard merge into board games.
Okay, so let's talk board games with Dan Hughes.
Let's get it hot.
Furnace.
I like it hot.
Now, how are we going to talk about Furnace with Dan? Dan, have you played Furnace?
No, but I can listen to you talk about Furnace.
I told Dan we were going to discuss emotions correlating to board games.
I have strong emotions, and they burn hot like Furnace. We'll have to talk about Furnace at another time. Our audience will have to wait 2 weeks.
We would talk about it in the podcast that's in the future, but yet in the past, I said we talk about Furnace even further into the future.
Dan, you have feelings about board games.
I do have feelings about board games. I generally like them,
but you haven't played any in a long time. So when I told you we're going to ask you if you'd come on the show, you're like, as long as we don't have to talk about board games, because you haven't played any.
I have played a few. I played what's it called? You see, Undaunted Normandy recently, which I really, really like.
So what feeling is it in Undaunted Normandy?
Well, this is it. This is interesting because you said you wanted to talk about feelings in board games and emotions in board games and what emotions board games kind of generate and things like that. And I'm not sure I like board games generating emotions because when they generate strong emotions like excitement or frustration and things, it generally turns to be negative for me unless you're playing a cooperative game. When I start getting excited about a board game, it means when I'm about to perform the killer move or something like that. And that excitement is always tinged with a bit of aggression because you're generally playing against somebody else. And I find that very disturbing about myself, how bad a loser I actually am. I like to think I'm a good loser. But when I'm really invested and really excited about something and then it doesn't go my way, I can get a bit sulky. And often emotions and board gaming don't gel particularly well for me. As I tend to turn negative, I quite like the more cold, the more rational side of board gaming. And I like the enjoyment and happiness of spending time with my friend. But the actual board game causing emotions often aren't massively positive.
Well, what about, and this is what I was thinking, was like when I play certain games, like it will give me a feeling, and I'm
a tingle. You call it
a tingle. It will give me a tingle
in your left ear.
It will give me the tingle in my right ear, Dan. My right ear.
I apologize.
And it's like we played Space Race. It left me dead inside. There was no feelings with Space Race.
Much like my first wife.
Hated it. You hated it. So, and when you say feelings or emotion, that could be a broad spectrum. So, satisfaction, is that a feeling?
I don't think so. It might be a feeling, but it's not an emotion, is it? It's not an emotion. Satisfaction is an emotion. It's a very bland emotion.
But I was thinking of, so like when I play certain games, like I broke out Riverboat the other day, and it was just so smooth. And it's like, it gives me, I have a feeling, I don't know if it's an emotion, but it gives me a feeling of just like, it clicks in your brain. And because it clicks in my brain, and sometimes games don't click in my brain, I'm like, this is very satisfactory to me. And if something's satisfactory to me, I mean, that's basically like a, I don't know, like brings me peace. And I'm playing this game and it's bringing me peace playing this game.
But you sound like, do you know who you sound like when you're saying that?
Oh my God, who?
You sound like Mr. Spock. You sound like it's bringing you peace because it's clicking and it's logical. And
it's a logical game. Riverboat's a very logical game.
I'm sure it is. And so the gears are working. And so it brings you peace because it brings you that kind of meditation, that mindfulness, that kind of focusing on the logic puzzle of it. So it's not raising emotions in you, is it?
See, Dan is drawing a differentiation between emotions and this actual type of what you're describing. He keeps talking about satisfaction and him declaring that that's not necessarily an emotion. This is very subtle.
It might be an emotion. I just don't consider it emotion for me.
I would think satisfaction is an emotion.
Well, no, when you say emotion, and this is interesting because when you talked about emotions in games, like I thought of like anger, frustration.
I mean, those are the outright, yes, but I mean, to me, satisfaction is an emotion.
Well, of course you like satisfaction because that's like...
We don't need none.
You don't need that.
The best thing about satisfaction is it's quite satisfying.
It satiates
I like that.
whatever. But I think that when you think of emotions, like I think of excitement, I think of excitement, frustration, and those are the two things that come into mind when I'm.
It's either like it'd be either excitement or anger. Probably the two people look for when they're looking at a game.
The most excited I've ever seen Gaby in a board game is when he literally jumped up from the table and he ran around his house. Like he jumped up from his kitchen table, ran into his living room, and ran the circle of his house, and we were playing Star Wars Rebellion.
One of the greatest days of my life.
And it was a game of very thematic, and I was beating the fire out of him the entire game. I was the Imperials. I am blowing up planets, and I think I know
the Empire was indeed striking back.
Yes, I think I know where his base is, but I'm moving the Death Star, and every time I moved it, we would fire and blow up another planet. So I'm leaving destruction in my wake, much like my first wife. And then at the very last, he attacks me with a few X-Wings, and it was Leia who was commanding these X-Wings. And I destroyed him except one X-Wing. And then he plays this card where he rolls this dice, and if he gets this, he blows up the Death Star and wins. So it came down to this entire game that we had played for like 2 or 3 hours being on a dice roll and this Hail Mary move. And he pulled it off, and he just lost his ever-loving mind.
It is one of my greatest gaming moments.
Tore his shirt, ran off,
shredded
and just went insane. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is the feeling. This game is great because it provides that for that particular player. Yeah. You can pull something off and have that feeling of what you got to relive the emotions that you felt in watching the original Star Wars and watching.
It's such a good game for that, though, isn't it? Yes. Such a good game. Anyway, that's the point.
And at the same time,
not that every game of that particular, not every game of Star Wars Rebellion is going to lead to that.
No, but games that have emotions in them, like they're woven. There are certain games that lend themselves to that more than others. For instance, at a previous podcast, we talked about Dead Last, a little stupid party game, and we enjoyed it quite a lot. I made the mistake of taking that game to work and playing that with people who are not board gamers, who are very sensitive, and took it personal. And that elicited some very negative emotions amongst the players simply because it's a vicious game.
Dead Last Dan. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I haven't played it.
It's very much like playing Mafia, except you're just saying, you're the Mafia, everyone let's kill him. It's just very out in the open. And it is not for the sensitive. It is not. But for those that can handle it, it is freaking amazing, because if you get the majority of people to vote off a particular color, then that person's gone. But if you make that outright known, then that person can play this ambush card, which defends them from that. So it's like you have to let people know we're voting for this person, but not really. We're voting for this person, because if that person knows, and it's an amazing game for just how outright blunt and blatant it is. But yet there are certain moves under the table you have to let be known. And so it is very exciting. But yes, it is very blunt, and it can hurt feelings, because who likes to be voted off?
Yeah, it sounds like High School Politics, the board game.
It can be.
It's like Mean Girls, the board game.
It's like, let's vote off blue, but let's really vote off red.
It's great when it's you, because you never see it coming, or when you pull something of that sort off, because then it's obvious that you were able to finagle everybody at the table to keep this secret, and this person didn't see it coming.
But that game in me creates A, excitement, B, paranoia, both emotions or feelings. I guess feelings and emotions are interchangeable at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say it's difficult to differentiate now. That sounds being a bit too harsh.
That's what I like about that. Let's go hard merge that into Raiders of the North Sea when I first played it. There's some games that are like, you read all these rules, it's like, oh my God, what are we playing? It's like freaking Excel spreadsheet. You hear that a lot. But then some games, and it's like you're just waiting for the moment when you finally understand the game. Raiders of the North Sea, I read the rules, we played a round or so, and like, bam, it clicks. And it's like, I understand what this game is doing, and it provided a pleasing sensation to me.
I understand that, but that's not that is your logic. that's your logic being tickled. So it's not your emotions being tickled.
So I'm having a hard time differentiating my logic being tickled and my emotions
being tickled.
I can't differentiate. I am Spock.
I'm not saying
I have a human mother.
I'm just saying within my mind, I don't play board games for the emotions. I play it for the
I do
puzzle. But do you though? That's the same as your ASMR stuff. That's not your emotions, is it? You're getting a pleasurable sensation from being stimulated.
I do,
as we all do. As we all do.
I like pleasurable sensations from stimulation.
I think Dan is nailing something down here where you are mistaking.
I might be.
Sensations with emotions.
Sensations. This game is sensational. Is what I should say.
Right. And I think, and Dan, I think most people can relate to this because even in relationships, you have these sensations of, man, I really like this person, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And that's not emotion. It's a sensation of this is a new person. This is going well. Oh, this is going to be great. Well, go to IKEA and try to buy some furniture and put it together and see if that sensation lasts and see if you don't hate that person for the rest of your life. Anyways, that point being is that there are certain sensations with board games and then there are certain emotions with others. And I think that differentiates between and I'll use Furnace, which we'll talk about in another episode, but essentially that game when I was playing it gave me no feelings whatsoever. There was no excitement. There was no anything of that nature, but the sensation of I'm trying to build this very apparent engine by bidding, and I need this card, and I need to bid high enough to get this card. But now I need to bid on this card to get these resources as well, and that would work well. And so it's all logical, and it's that sensation or that satisfaction of I've got the cards I need, I got the resources I need, now I'm going to run my engine. That's not necessarily an emotion of excitement, but rather a sensation of everything's going according to plan.
Maybe it's a bit like the difference between a craft and an art, in that a craft is a series of techniques that you perform to get the outcome that you want, whereas an art is very much more of an interpretation of your own emotions that expresses itself through painting or whatever.
And that's hard to understand too, unless you take part in something that is considered an art. And I think that a lot of people don't make that differentiation either between a craft and an art. Because a lot of what we do in connections with board games, and I say board games, I say in design. I've never designed a board game, but a lot of designing a board game.
You should try it, Jerry. It's good.
I know. I hear that, and then I read the comments. A lot of there are board games that are designed via a craft, like it's obvious. You took mechanics that work, and we have pieced these well-founded mechanics and this spreadsheet and these numbers, and it makes sense. And then there's art. There are board games that truly are a work of art, where you can tell that the designers have put together something that is an expression of their emotions, and it lets you experience something that you can't really have any other way. One stupid instance that I often think about when that argument comes up about board games and art and craft and whatever, are they truly art? I think of Zaya, the space game, the big sandbox space game. I purchased that. I had it on my shelf for a long time. I finally learned it, and we set it up and played it. And during the teach, I remember telling everybody, like, you scan before you put out another tile, another hexagon. And you want to do that because if you don't and you just move your ship in there, you're blindly jumping, and you could jump into a sun. Like, you don't do that. And Enrique completely ignores this advice and right off the bat says, I'm just going to go. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't do that because there might be something bad in this stack. He's like, no, I'm going to do it. And pulls off a sun and jumps his ship directly into the sun. And so then starts over, Fast forward another hour, he's got a new ship, he's got a better ship, and he does it again. I'm like, you shouldn't do that. No, there might be another sun. I think there's 2 suns. I think I have the expansion in here. Don't do that. He's like, no, what's the chances of it happening again? And literally, it happened again. And it was...
Never tell me the odds, kid.
It was absolutely hilarious. And so it was obviously, when that happened, I thought, the designers did this. They did this. When they were playtesting this game, they made up this rule because one of their dumb friends did this, and they said, you know what? Let's have this where they can move. And you experience the art of a game. And sometimes that's hit or miss. Like a game that is truly artful. It's not for everybody. It's not mainstream. I think some of the most mainstream board games are just that. They're a craft. They work well. They appeal to everybody. They give a good sensation. But then there are games that are truly artful that don't speak to everybody just as art does.
Name one.
A game that's truly artful?
Yeah.
That is niched. Niche.
I can tell you what Ben Maddox would say, although I've never played the game.
Through the Ages.
No, Holding On.
Holding On. Now, I have played Holding On, which is the game about a dying man, correct? Is that the one I'm thinking of? I appreciate... Now, that game, when I first played it, meant nothing to me. And now, after spending about several months doing hospice work, I think that game was obviously... If I played it again and looking back on it, I think it certainly means something completely different. And it's because of experiences. And that game was designed, obviously, by people who were trying to they wanted you to be able to live and see this character go through this end stage of life and being able to go back and look at their previous dealings.
What you're saying to me, though, tends to lend more itself towards storytelling games,
right? So and that's a good point. Now
that is a good point.
When you watch shows, there are certain shows, I say shows, television, whatever, that when you see them, they mean nothing to you because you have not experienced that. Like you're playing off the idea of
if you came into this episode of Ted Lasso, it doesn't mean nothing to you, but you have to watch the whole show for it to mean something to you.
No, that's not what I'm meaning.
Okay.
I'm meaning in your life experiences.
Like watching an episode of Bones or Law and Order. It's just a formulaic thing they go through.
Correct. So you're watching something that perhaps has affected you.
Okay.
Like you have seen something and it's something that you have experienced and you go, this show captures it. My wife, the other day, we were watching television. We were having a date night, #date night.
Oh, my God.
I love you, honey.
You're one of those?
Yeah, we are. And we watched Backdraft together.
The most romantic of shows.
Oh, yes. Which did, Dan, have you ever watched Backdraft?
I vaguely remember putting your hand backwards on a doorknob. Is that right?
No, that's the Kurt Russell, Robert Burns. That's not his name. That's the guy off MASH. Show about firemen. When it's
Kurt Russell and many flames in slow motion.
It's Hans Zimmerman soundtrack and Ron Howard directing. And
Hans Zimmer, not Zimmerman.
He is the man.
He is the man.
It's a very overdone 90s show. Anyways,
that soundtrack was lit.
It was lit. The show was just about over dramatized firefighter stuff. And while we're watching it, I griped the entire time going, this is not...
I'm sure you did.
This is not right. This is not
It's not accurate.
This is not accurate. And it doesn't make any sense. But while we're watching the show, my wife's like, well, the show is not about, is it accurate? It's about the feeling behind it. You're watching it thinking it's a firefighting show. It's not about firefighting. And then when I'm watching the show, I realize, no, this is about a relationship between two brothers, their relationship in connection with their father, and dealing with the trauma of losing their father at a young age and how that affected them. The show's completely different when you look at it through that perspective. Now,
just like Vertical Limit with Chris O'Donnell hiking that mountain.
Absolutely. I'm scared of heights. That show means a lot to me. But no, when you watch a show where you yourself have some sort of input, it's something that you yourself have either experienced or witnessed or been a part of, it hits differently. So
that's true. It hit a little different, as the kids say.
And
at least 3 years ago.
I think with board games, sometimes we play games And we're looking for not just sensations, but emotions that perhaps are just outside, sometimes are just outside of what we were expecting. Like, that's why I've often said about Game of Thrones.
Unexpected emotions.
Right. Game of Thrones is not a great game. It's not a game that I recommend to everybody. But I like that sneaky little finger backstabbing. I'm telling you we're going to do this, but in the back of my mind, I'm going to get you. Mm-hmm. I love that type of gameplay, and I love that feeling of I've outsmarted you.
Just real quick. See, Dan, this is what happens. If I don't interrupt Jerry, he can talk for a long time. So if you want to kick in here at any moment,
I'm happy.
feel
I've
free.
got the point, but it depends on Jerry's Game of Thrones.
Right, we need to wrap up this conclusion.
Is Dan
you've been
on?
Dan's on, Jerry. I don't know if you're aware, but you've been talking for a while. Please wrap it up so that Dan can speak.
Listen,
all right.
I'm just saying is that emotions and sensation and Jim Beam, they're not all the
same. Jim Beam.
It's interesting you said about Game of Thrones, though, because I don't enjoy those. Because like I think emotion, the more you get player interactions, so the more you get other sacks of meat sitting across the table from you, is the more that emotions start being involved in games. And also, the more kind of a merry trashy you get, the more narrative driven, the more the more likely is it's going to invoke emotions and things like that. And the more Euro is going to be the more logical and straightforward and stuff. But I don't enjoy experiencing negative emotions, and I count being backstabbed or backstabbing somebody else or all that kind of stuff to be a negative emotion. I don't enjoy hidden traitor games because I don't enjoy that feeling of going behind people's back. I don't enjoy the feeling of people going behind my back and all that kind of stuff, even though it's within the safe, acceptable magic circle of a board game. Just like I don't enjoy horror films where I don't enjoy being scared, even though it's within the safe, magical circle of this isn't real, it's a film. I still don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy practicing those. People say that horror films are popular because people get something out of practicing that emotion, if you see what I mean. Practicing being scared, practicing being concerned and things like that, because it's in a safe space, and so therefore you can go through the motions without actually having to do it for real. And similarly, hidden traitor games, high conflict games, all that kind of stuff allow you to be aggressive within a safe, acceptable space. But just like I don't enjoy being scared even within the safe space, I don't enjoy feeling aggressive even within the safe space. That's completely my own perspective on things. And I accept that other people do, and I don't think less of it, but I think a little bit less.
It sounds like you're saying I'm a closeted psychopath who likes to backstab.
I think the word closeted is doing a lot of work.
Well, see, when we played the very game that Jerry's talking about, Game of Thrones, he backstabbed me.
Instantly.
And so, instantly, first move out of the bucket, Jerry, we got an alliance, right? Yeah. All right. Oh, you've turned against me. I was angry. But being able to continuing on playing the game, I appreciated that. I appreciate that a game is able to evoke that emotion in me. I'm like, to me, that's something. Like, I appreciate that game enabled Jerry to make that move, made me so angry that he betrayed me. And I'm like, wow, without this construct of this game, I wouldn't have experienced that. But because of this game, I now know how Jerry is.
So it's a safe environment, isn't it? It's a safe environment to play out those emotions.
It's nice to know that, if I was born hundreds of years ago, I would have been in the situation.
I'd be dead. You'd be alive.
I would be one of these people. That would have been my persona. And this board game allows me to exercise what is something that I find to be not necessarily a quality, because I don't think that backstabbing and convincing and things of this nature is necessarily a quality, because in real life I would never manipulate and move about. But the fact is that I know deep down in my psyche there is something that exists that I find to be rather entertaining when I indulge in it in this realm of being able to say, look, we're going to plan this out. This is what we're going to do. And at the very last, that feeling of, okay, yeah, you thought this is what we're going to do, but I put it over on you. You assume this is what was going to take place. But now I have moved everything around to where now I have the upper hand. And this has all occurred with you went along with it. I've tricked you. Congratulations. I'm a magician. I've manipulated things to work out into my favor. And I think that board games allow people to indulge in those emotions. And I think that's an interesting point, that the difference between emotions and these sensations that they give you. And really, I think that that's really what makes a great board game, is either those that hinge on these very intense emotions, like
narrative games tend to lead towards stronger emotions.
I think Ameritrash rather than narrative. I think obviously sometimes they're quite closely linked.
Yeah.
Just as Jay was about to say, Cosmic Encounter can invoke some pretty intense emotions. And that isn't a narrative game. There's a narrative. There's a way it is in that a narrative emerges from it, because you can tell us. You can't tell a story about what happened in Agricola a month later, but you can definitely tell a story about what happened in Cosmic Encounter a month later. So a narrative does emerge, but it's not a storytelling game.
So then, speaking of these two different types, then, so let's say American narrative gives you strong emotions. A good European gives you a sensation.
I know some good Europeans.
Is that what we're saying? So like we were saying, like this game we just played, Space Race, straight up Euro style game, card playing, zero sensation, nothing linked together. There was no theme, zero sensation, it gave me anger, but not in a good way. But like a solid game like Marco Polo, any Crescent City Cargo, any of these games that you're doing these logic puzzles and it clicks that thing in your brain, you're like, gives you this good sensation, which I guess now we're differentiating that according to this podcast.
Well, we don't have to. I'm just saying, within my mind, it's differentiated.
Well, that's a curious thing, though. A good sensation in your brain, that tickle of your brain versus
good
an emotion.
Vibrations.
A good vibration in your brain versus an outright emotion of anger, joy, happiness, exultation, betrayal. It's interesting. I'd like to know the delineation between those two.
I think it's been personal, won't it?
It is personal. Like with Cosmic Encounter, like all the great experiences. Like I think we should just do a Patreon and just sell tickets to play Cosmic Encounter with Enrique, because anytime you bust out Cosmic Encounter, Enrique loses his ever-loving mind.
How so?
Because of the cards. Enrique likes cards. He likes having a weird power that is super.
Hold on, Enrique, you've been off this whole time.
But mainly, Jerry is afraid to just play card games with me.
I don't.
Yeah,
he's scared. You're saying he's scared.
I can see him trembling from here.
That's an emotion. He's scared.
Actually, you know what? Deck building games.
Hey, wait. We played Furnace. That was a card game.
It was a card game.
And I believe I beat
who
you.
won?
You did.
That's right. Okay, go ahead, Enrique.
But not just any card game, mainly deck building. I have a somewhat innate ability of being able to just play a deck building game. And I don't know what it is.
And deck building to me is a craft, because it takes a lot of skill and knowledge to be able to piece together this. And it is very satisfying to do so. But like with Cosmic Encounter, being able to have this weird power and this negotiation and these weird cards and the backstabbing, some of my most favorite of board game stories that I've ever had have come from playing Cosmic Encounter with Enrique and a large group of people. And it's because of the alliances that are made, the craftiness of the negotiations and the card play, and just the absolute craziness that occurs in that game. And so I think that really one has to come down when it comes to what you prefer as a board game. And I wanted to delve into this a little bit myself in terms of, I don't want to say it's like, well, it's heralding back to what Dan has said, where he's just not played a lot of board games. I myself, within the past 2 months, have played the least amount of board games I ever had in many, many years. And thinking about that, of like, why have I lost? Because even when I've not been able to be around Gaby and play the multiplayer games. I've often played solo. And at some point in time, I've realized I have gotten into this habit where I would much rather either be watching a Netflix show, which is out of character for me, or playing some sort of mind-numbing video game or something that just takes pressure off of me, rather than engaging in something that I find to be actually stimulating. I think I'm just depressed. That it's just that.
I think that's what that's called.
It could be.
Are you drinking in these times?
Constantly.
Oh, yeah, that's depression.
But no, it's this idea because used to.
It's either depression or alcoholism.
Used to.
One can lead to the other.
It was the idea of I want to, I was excited by the idea of busting out some board game, whether it just be reading the rules or punching it out.
You love reading rules. You love playing solos. I'm shocked that you haven't had something set up and that's what you're going to.
No.
But
it's mental energy, though, isn't it? What he's describing is he's getting pleasure at the moment. He's enjoying having mental load taken off him rather than placed on him because you're busy at work.
Right.
And that's why I go back to, that's why Gina, my wife, that's still classic, right? She hates board gaming, the games that I like to play, because she always says, I don't want to expel that mental energy because I'm exhausted from work. She thinks a lot at work. So do you, even more so, lives are depending on you sometimes to do the same.
I'm a hero.
You're a friggin' hero.
And as a hero,
according to you.
I have and my community, coworkers.
The plaque says so. Does the plaque say hero on there anywhere?
It does. It legitly. I made a copy.
What does it say?
Healthcare hero.
Hero. Dan, you're in the midst of a hero.
There's
How
no
does that make you?
I'm just furious. I haven't got a healthcare hero. I was working during COVID.
Well, I mean, it's different.
I got truck driving hero.
You're a speed racer.
Those rocks would not have gotten there lest I had been behind the wheel.
I drove by a very dangerous overpass there in our area, and I saw a rock truck tipped over into the median there, and instantly called Gaby and said, "Are you okay?" Just making sure. A lot of times he's just driving, watching Squid Games on his phone, and then drives off the road. It's like, I don't know, is he all right? I gotta make sure. Going back to that mental energy, like this is an executive function, I guess, is like you're tired at the end of the day, and you just want to. I've deleted, and I don't buy into
TikTok.
this. Yeah, I told Gaby. Gaby's always watching TikTok. And
Love TikTok. That's where I get all my news from.
Well, Gaby's always sending me these videos, and I didn't have the app. And so
they're hilarious.
I ended up getting the app, and then I thought, this is going to be a neat experiment. I'm going to just watch this app for a little bit and see what videos pop up. And apparently, TikTok thought that I was super interested in Bigfoot and skinwalkers and UFOs. I don't know what it saw in me or what I watched.
That's called the FYP for you page. That means you clicked on something.
But that
triggered the algorithm.
Like every video was just making me more paranoid of maybe there is.
Or maybe you said, I listened to Death by Monsters and TikTok was listening.
But with that, I deleted it because it realized that TikTok is useless. I like being able to get information from something, not somebody rattling on for 30 minutes. And then, or 30 seconds, and then it's gone. But this feeling of I need to have something that is stimulating, that's hard to get back to. And this idea of dopamine, surging through your brain because you're playing this Bejeweled or TikTok or whatever on your phone. I think that's an important aspect of how we can drown out and keep ourselves entertained, but not really stimulated.
Well, we had this discussion previously, and I was saying there's something different between drowning hours into social media. Talk about no feeling. You get zero feeling from that other than wasted time. You're like, where the crap did my time go? As opposed to when you do put forth, when I put forth the time to set up a solo board game. Say I set up a solo board game. When I sit there and I play a game of it, 2 games of it, I told Jerry in a previous podcast, I feel like a sense of satisfaction from playing a solo board game. More so than watching a show or browsing social media. I get nothing out of social media, but when I play a solo board game, it gives me a sense of satisfaction. This is completely stupid. The only thing that kind of gives me that is when I complete a series of television. When I close something out, I have completed Cowboy Bebop. I'm done with it. I get that sense of fulfillment, like I've accomplished this. It's so stupid.
Well, that's no more valid than finishing a solo board game.
I mean, I know, but more often when I play a solo board game, I get that feeling, or even reading a book, completing a book. It's like this.
It's because in your mind you have categorized things into virtuous and non-virtuous, and playing a board game you've categorized as virtuous for whatever reason. Reading a book you've categorized as virtuous for whatever reason, and finishing a series of things gives you that sense of completion. And I'm exactly the same. I've got a little TV app, and if I finish a series,
I got it, and I click that button, and it makes this little animation.
And even seeing the percentage of how many Bob's Burgers. Oh, I've done 33% of Bob's Burgers.
So there's something in us as human beings that we enjoy.
We like to complete things. We like to complete things we see as valuable.
We feel like we're making progress, even though we're not. We're not. I completed Cowboy Bebop. Did that do anything for my life? To me and my brain, it did.
You're ready for the live action.
I'm ready.
Now.
I want to see how they interpret. Yes, whatever.
Gabby, it did do something for your life because you consumed a piece of art.
I guess so. I consumed art. Yes,
you are.
You consumed a piece of art, and therefore your cultural inner cultural self is richer for consuming a piece of good quality art. That's why you feel positive.
I like that. That's very good, Dan.
You're consuming art.
I'm consuming art.
Just like when you finish a book, you've consumed art, and occasionally you might, sometime 10 years in the future, something might remind you of that book or something like that, and it kind of goes, oh, yeah, it's now in your brain. It's you've developed yourself as a human being.
I watched that.
What happened? I just watched the 4th season of Will and Grace. I am consuming art.
I would argue you are consuming art. Yeah.
Grey's Anatomy, season 10.
Oh, man, don't get me started on Grey's Anatomy. Go ahead.
Well, leading into that, it's like, okay, so then it's like, okay, talking about, then you go into art, consuming art. What's art? What's not? I mean, is watching there's some movies that's like, oh man, the critics are like, that is a work of art. That's a piece of art. As opposed to something that's just like National Lampoon's Vacation or whatever. I mean, you don't get the same feeling from watching that as you do Schindler's List. It's like you feel an accomplishment.
Or you shouldn't.
There's a snobism to that, Gaby, which is appropriate for this podcast. Obviously, there's a snobism from that, and I would say that you get something from everything. I mean, the problem comes when you just do that exclusively, when you just watch TV all the time. But a wide variety of diet of going for walks and playing board games and reading books, reading comics, watching TV, watching films, that can't do anything but make you richer.
So this is my question then. Is it okay to be a consumer only?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I sometimes feel guilty that when I produce only, like at the moment when I'm occasionally putting out board game content, but not really listening to any board game content, watching any board game content, or even playing many board games, I feel guilty because I feel like I'm almost leeching off the audience type stuff. I'm being disingenuous. I think it is. I think it is okay to be a consumer only, but it's. I don't know how anyone manages it because I can't. Not just like you guys. I mean, you guys have an internal desire to produce, even though no one listens.
Yeah. Well, I've heard this analogy many times in my life. It's like being invited to I don't know, what's they call that? A potluck. Do you have potluck dinners, Dan?
Yes, I know what they are. I think they're called something else here.
It's when, like, I bring a casserole, Jerry brings
spotted dicks. That's what it's something more cultural.
Hey, I tell you what. If I ever visit, I'm bringing a spotted dicks. It's lovely.
I bet you are.
So it's like everyone brings something to the meal, but you're the only one. You're just consuming only. So it's like, when do you bring something to the table? So that's kind of like the thing I always wonder about. It's like, I'm taking it all in. But what am I contributing?
Well, besides this podcast,
besides this podcast, nothing.
I think in terms of creativity, though, like we've had this discussion about creativity being something it's not passive. It's something you have to actively engage in, something you have to do to get better at and to get kind of the juices flowing. And like Dan is obviously someone who has produced and has been on both sides of that spectrum.
My juices are flowing everywhere.
We have been privy to.
You should wear a diaper.
We've been privy to a lot of your juices.
Speaking of which, so like, I'm going to interrupt you shortly, but along these lines, Jerry's like, you got to like to be a writer, you got to write. Like you just got to write. Just start writing. And I've read that before. If you want to write comedy, anything you want to do, artistic or whatever, you just got to do it. If you want to be a writer, just start writing. So so stupid. The other day, I'm thinking about, I don't know why this popped into my brain, but like, I'm trying to learn to write things down as they pop into my brain. So like, there's the movie Apocalypse Now.
Right.
I heard somebody say the other day something about the Acropolis. I'm like, what about the Acropolis now? And I say, I like the smell of gyros in the morning. So that's a joke. I should write that down. But is that a joke? Is it any good? Well, it doesn't matter. I'm writing it down. Now I'm creative. Yeah.
Yeah, and you write down every day. Don't you? You still you do your teenage journal, don't you?
Do what's that?
I thought you do a journal, don't you, Gabby?
Yes.
The diary.
Yeah, well, you're writing then, aren't you?
Yes.
You're being creative every single day.
I'm writing. I don't know how creative it is, but yes.
Well, it is creative. It is creative. That's the thing. That's the thing.
Acropolis Now. I like the smell of gyros in the morning.
Or
sorry.
feta. I didn't realize this was a vehicle for you to make that joke.
It was a vehicle for me to make that joke, but now I can erase it from my journal.
Well, there you go. But I think that producing something and being creative, like having something that is yours, is a different feeling than consuming. I think that when you just consume things, you get into this mindset of, I don't want to say being critical, but it's almost like it's never enough. It's like when you have to actually do something yourself, you have a deeper appreciation for it. Like, I must assume that like Dan has a different viewpoint of board games, having to go through the design process and then publishing it and then Kickstarters. That now, from my viewpoint of it, it's just, I'm giving somebody my money. I hope this game shows up sometime in the future and that the meeples aren't warped. It's different. It's a different thought process.
This will go into our podcast next week that we recorded, but we're in the past and the future. We were talking about, when does something become worthy of criticism, and then how do people feel about that criticism? So, have you ever heard so if someone was to give a negative review of Cora Quest,
I will.
Have you heard a negative review of Cora Quest, Dan?
I've heard negative reviews of Cora, not reviews, but I've heard negative opinions of Cora Quest from playtesters, which have been very useful because that helped me change it. But now it's set in stone and is in a box, and I can't change it.
Okay.
It hasn't come out yet, so no one has had the chance to. I'm very, very fearful of it, I must admit.
So once it comes out and you see the first one that says, "This is more like Snora Quest," how do you? No doubt, as the designer, how do you think that will affect you?
That's going to sting. It's going to sting. I'm in the unfortunate position of being a complete narcissist, so I'm going to watch absolutely everything. I still Google Cora Quest to see if anyone's talking about it now. No one is, but I still Google it to check if anyone is. So when it actually comes out and people are going to start talking about it, it does worry me. I don't like the term imposter syndrome because it's just anxiety, really. But I have got the thing saying, well, I'm kind of only a game designer because I said I was one. No one gave me any, I didn't have to do exams. I just did it and then put it out. And it's my first one and it went really well for a first one. And maybe it's not going to be live up to everyone's expectations and things like that. You know, me and Cora designed it. I'm an idiot, and Cora's 8. Do you know what I mean? What you expected? So I do worry about it. But then I sit on my Kickstarter millions, and I think, well, whatever. I've got the money now anyway. So it's fine.
Well, that's what we were discussing. It's like, you know, is when something becomes worthy of the question is in the future of this podcast. When does something become worthy of criticism and what makes it so? And when you criticize that, how should you frame it? And there's lots of people that say, rather than saying objectively, this is not good, a lot of reviewers have gone to the lane of, in my opinion, this is not good. But then some people say, well, you're just giving yourself a cheap way out. Either it's good or it's not good, blah, blah, blah. So, and then we were talking about the effect that has on.
I think, in my opinion, should never need to be stated when you're doing a review because
it's redundant, right?
That's redundant because yes, that is what a review is. No one can take an objective opinion on anything in the entire world ever. Certainly not a board game.
Well, I can. Gaby often cops out of something every time he makes a strong statement.
Well, because of that, because I don't like to hurt feelings, and I know that hard work does go into stuff, but. Space Race, I didn't enjoy it. I think Space Race sucked. Literally, I posted on We're Not Wizards Facebook page. I said, "Has anybody played this?" And somebody said,
"Is he still alive?"
He's still alive. I haven't heard from him in a long time, but he's still active on his Facebook. But someone did say they like Space Race a lot. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then I played it. I did not enjoy it at all.
I think it's fine to recognize other people like stuff you don't. But I don't like, in my opinion, you know, it's like, well, yeah, we know that already. We know it's your opinion.
Everything I say is my POV.
No, I like to say other people's opinion and pass it off as my own. I often read reviews before I give, you know, my opinion on things. Well, but I find that just the whole creative process of not just board gaming, I think it can be applied to movies or anything. When anything comes out into the public sphere, and now we have this inward, I don't know, it's like now we're given permission that we can be critical of it, which is fine, I believe, in my opinion, because, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's not objective. It is subjective. There are some objective thoughts that can be given in terms of quality and like perhaps the production value of something, but in terms of the actual feeling and emotions that something elicits, that's purely subjective. And so to get tied up on that, and I think that stems from us being really concerned about not just being what we would consider to be critics of board games, which although we're not board game reviewers, we're just critics. We're just harsh on what we like and
just
yeah, there you go. That rather, at the same time, there's got to be a certain amount of satisfaction that just comes from the hard work and the labor of designing a board game, no matter what anybody thinks of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the point. What I'm trying to do is make you feel good that when Core Quest has horrible reviews, that you can at least sit back and bask in the glow that you had a good time making it. And nobody can take away the experience that you had designing a board game with your dog.
Exactly. I mean, I always said this isn't the game, this is the rule book. I just wanted that in my hands, and I've got that in my hands now. So that is what I wanted out of it ultimately. And the rest of it's gravy. So yeah.
And I'm very glad that I could inspire you to greatness.
Yeah, you did to a certain extent, because I don't think I would have said you fancy making a board game if I hadn't just recorded with you the day before.
Yeah, see, and that's see, so you've heard it himself. I am a board game hero.
So
I am a healthcare hero.
What you need to do is you and Jack and Kaya make a derivative game of Core Quest.
No, my kids aren't smart enough.
Oh,
it's okay.
Your kids are the same age as Cora.
They don't mean nothing.
Yeah, his kids are American now.
They're American. What were they going to bring out? My kids eat glue.
Dan, thanks for coming on.
No worries. A pleasure as always, with an hour's notice.
Yes, you came in guns a-blazing for this Podbean's featured special.
Yeah, but Libsyn's a bit better, but still.
You know, I have struggled when we were looking for a podcast host. It's like there's so many out there. You can post on Anchor for free. And
Hey,
they will.
they'll pot me.
No, let me take that back. All right. Well, Dan, give your family our hellos and give Mike our love.
Oh, well, I will do. I have to wake him up now, but okay.
No.
All right, I'm going to do that now.
Next time you see Mike, give him our love.
3 months away.
When's that going to be? Am I right?
He's too busy at the Dice Tower Spa.
DTHQ. Am I right?
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Gaby.
This is Jerry.
This is Enrique.
And this has been Dan.
Hey, let me say Dan.
Okay, my bad. Okay.
I'm Dan.
Oh, go.
I'm Dan.
Dan.
That's gonna be the new soundbite.
Dan the Man Hughes.
I'm Don.
All right, very good.
I'm Dan.
Thank you for listening to the Board Game Snobs. Stay classy.
I'm Dan.